boy! There you are. Very good, just in time. You will be delighted to know that I need you for an experiment. So, the grey garrison stands roofless. Demons are running for the hills with their tails between their legs. Mendive's queen, what's her name? It doesn't matter. Scurrying to and fro, and all this is somehow connected to you, my loyal fellow. Thus far, there is no scientific evidence of your exceptionality, if one discounts blind faith in divine intervention, which I of course do. We people of science refuse to believe in the inexplicable without any proof. We are the ones who explain the inexplicable. Nino punctuates her statement with an energetic sweep of her arms. And therefore, open your mouth and say, "Ah," for me. Ah. Nino peers into your mouth with a practiced eye. Alrighty, your throat's fine. Tongues look perfectly normal. Your breath? The smell is in line with regular functioning of the digestive system. Now, for your teeth. She sticks one hand in your mouth and probes each of your teeth in turn with the skill of a seasoned dentist. No detectable alterations. By the way, did you know that many individuals, while being wholly civilized representatives of their races, still have an amazingly powerful bite? As if suddenly recalling something, Nino promptly pulls her hand out of your mouth. Are you really trying to find a correlation between fang length and civility? Nino seems slightly embarrassed. For the good of science, I look for correlations everywhere and in everything. How can you prove there's no correlation if you don't bother to look for one? I mean, that's very... I accept. Of course, you should try to narrow in correlations that make sense somehow. But looking everywhere once just to rule everything out, that doesn't make any sense. That's fine. Say nothing. Moving on. Alright, what do we have next? Ears. Let's check your hearing. Testing. Nino yells right in your ear and nods in satisfaction as she observes your reaction. Oh, your hearing is fine. It was fine. But don't worry, it's scientifically proven that it should return to normal soon. Soon, maybe a year. Permanent loss of hearing is no fun, but it's all for science. Alrighty. Next. Neo circles you. Eyes are clear. Posture is satisfactory. Limb length is standard, no lies. She stops, rubs her chin in contemplation, and in a slightly dejected tone says, "Boy, you are the picture of health. Oh, it's a pity. I was expecting to find some anomaly. Well, now let's assess your mental health. Imagine a hypothetical situation. You are a tree. Two squirrels have found their way into your hollow and are now copulating there. What do you do?" I'll do precisely nothing, because I'm a tree. And we already know what happened when Gimli made the joke with the squirrel droppings, and that one could have turned out very bad, so... An unconscious act of withdrawal along with a lack of trust in your own abilities, or perhaps just a healthy dose of pragmatism? On to the next question. Another hypothetical situation. You are a tomato. You have just been picked from the vegetable patch and put in a crate. You know that today the cook will use half of the tomatoes from your crate to make soup. What do? There's nothing I can do. I'm a tomato, remember? An unconscious act of withdrawal again. Inability or unwillingness to see something bigger behind something small. Alrighty, I understand. I see where all your problems lie. You have massive trauma. On the surface, it appears you don't really believe in your ability to change things, but in fact, you are a strong pragmatist who knows perfectly well what you can and can't do. Your reasoning is that of a mortal, one who's capable of achieving a great deal, though he would deny even that. That sounds like me. On that note, I deem this experiment complete. Thank you for your participation. Ninio looks at you pensively and then gestures at you with a wide sweep of her arm. And yet, you remain a puzzle to me. I love puzzles. One of these days I will solve you completely, unless I forget. Now I have time to answer your questions. Come on, ask away. Okay, that we have already. Blah, blah, blah. Oh, that's new. But you do remember your own name, right? Only so I know what to put for the author's name in my encyclopedia. Are there any names worth remembering? Oh, there are, and to my deepest regrets, there are too many of them. Ninio heaves a sigh that would befit a grief-stricken old man. The names of gods and demigods, the name of rulers, conquerors, and other persons by some reason, deemed great by the people of Golarion. They etched their names into history, and alas, every self-respecting educated person must know them. But there are some names I am happy to remember. Great scientists, some of the divine, others mortal, true keepers of knowledge, and great experimentalists, the pioneers of knowledge. Iori, Nethys, Arelu Volesh. White is evil. Arelu Volesh opened the world wound. She's the betrayer of humanity. It's her fault the demons invaded Golarion. Oh yes, she is the greatest of the greatest. Just imagine she managed to open a rift from Golarion to the Abyss. No one knew how, no one believed it possible, no one even dreamed of such a thing, and she just did it. It was the experiment of the century. Ninio wipes a tear from her eye. I would have been so happy if I could have been in her place. Of course, some part of Golarion's population died as a result of her experiment, and the Crusaders are still wrestling with its consequences to this day, but the very essence of what Arhelu managed to do was a breakthrough of cosmic significance, both figuratively and literally. Sooner or later, the world wound will be closed. Peace will return to Golarion. As for the victims of the ongoing war, they will be remembered as unfortunate but unavoidable sacrifices made at the altar of science. That's an interesting way to look at things, though I'm not sure the Crusaders, which I lead, would agree with you. Ninio blinks at you, perplexed. Were we talking about something? Tell me about yourself. I am an explorer. Future actor, we had that already. Where are you from? That information is irrelevant. I decided to forget it. How did you become a scientist? Irrelevant. You have a circle tattooed on your shoulder. What does it mean? Ah! Ninio cast a sidelong glance at her shoulder. I do not remember the circumstances of its creation, but I like it. I prefer to think of it as a zero, null, nothing. A center point, an origin of coordinates. It reminds me how much of the unknown world there is to explore. Don't you remember how you got this tattoo? Well, that information is relevant. How can you just decide to forget important pieces of information? This is just one of my many talents. The secret is to stop thinking about the thing you want to forget. And the main thing is not to remember anything you don't need, to filter it, to get right to the essence. I'll teach you someday. Unless I forget. What is this encyclopedia you're working on? The Encyclopedia Golarionica will be published in 100 volumes, 1,000 pages each, plus the author's addenda, appendices added by future co-authors, and critical commentaries. Addenda indexation is still in question. Ninio looks slightly embarrassed. I just like the number 100, but I'm not sure that I'll be able to keep within the established word limit. It will be a magisterial piece of scholarship that will become a part of the mandatory curriculum of every educational institution worth mentioning. In it, I intend to describe every object, item, event, fact, and personality that is present on, or at least somehow related to Golarion. My calculations show that I have completed no more than 1% of this monumental book. There's still a lot to do then. Do you remember your parents, your past, or is it all irrelevant too? All of it is irrelevant on the grand scale of world history. I have no reason to remember such things. Forgetting your origin, knowing nothing about... No, we're going to say nothing. Huh, what were we talking about? Okay. Well, I'll just stop torturing you with questions for now. Oh, I'd like to clarify a few things about your new task. Your craving for knowledge will be immediately satisfied. Ask away. Okay, we already had that. I have to go. So we're done here already. Odd fella, this girl. Okay, do we have any more randomly play? Loot! Chaos, silver embroidered purse. 8KT,
Godspeed.
Commander, allow me to say something. Irabeth looks even more serious than usual. Before you... This wasn't a war. It was agony, drawn out over decades. No one believed in victory anymore. When the demons attacked the city, for some it was relief, at least the end had come. They laid down their weapons and surrendered without a fight. I felt the same thing, but I somehow got through on stubbornness and the vague hope that if nobody found Anavia's body, she might by some miracle have survived, and that miracle was you. You returned my beloved to me when I'd nearly lost all hope of seeing her alive again. Then, you went on a suicide mission to the great garrison and won the city back for us. You turned a defeat into a victory. I know it wasn't easy, but you make everything seem so effortless. You do everything just like that, she says with a snap of her fingers. The Queen believes in your powers too, but for me, they are just more proof of what I felt that day when I saw Anavia alive, standing next to you. You're the miracle we've been waiting for. You're the one who will finally put an end to this terrible war, and, in spite of everything, deliver us the victory we so desperately need. With you, I'm sure this crusade will achieve what the others could not. I found a scabbard with your family name on it in the Grey Garrison. Irabeth looks down. This scabbard held the Solemn Hour, my family sword. My father once fought with it, and I took it when I left home to become a paladin. Alas, it was not stolen. I parted with my heirloom willingly to help someone dear to me. Anavia needed expensive healing, and having no other way to procure the money, I pawned my father's sword. I think he would have understood. I'm sure he would have given up everything to help the family. I like the soundtrack. I hoped to redeem the Solemn Hour eventually, but there was never enough money, and soon the sword disappeared from the pawn shop altogether. I have no idea who took it. It seems like I'll have to part with my father's sword forever. I can sense that you truly loved her. A delicate blush appears on Irabeth's cheeks. She nods silently. Irabeth lovingly traces the name imprinted in silver on the scabbard's leather. My parents were loyal servants, yet it wasn't enough to earn them a title or a coat of arms. Still, however humble our name might be, it is worth something. I don't know if I'll ever see the Solemn Hour again, but at least I have its scabbard back. Thank you. So, it turns out that the Queen has her head of counterintelligence watching me. I wonder why. I think the Queen doesn't trust you? Nah, if that were true, she wouldn't have put you in charge of this army. My main task is to be your advisor until you've gained enough experience as a commander. As for counterintelligence, Anivia and I were tasked with keeping an eye on your inner circle, but you're not under suspicion, Commander. You're under our protection. We need reinforcements. Can you get us more soldiers? Erebeth frowns. When we began the march on Dresden, we chose speed over numbers. If I order more volunteers to be recruited, they simply won't arrive in time. We could pay mages to deliver the troops to the camp, except I doubt that our army's coffers could afford it. If you can spare 7,500 gold coins, I will see to our reinforcements. Sure, you have your orders. Consider it done. It's hard to believe your origin is so humble. You deserve a noble title, more than many who inherit them. Erebeth's cheeks blush a little. Thank you, Commander. It's an honor to hear that, especially from you. Every noble family begins somewhere. You must have heard the recent story from the stolen lands in the River Kingdoms. Yeah, I'm pretty sure that was the first game still. Just imagine coming from nowhere and making it all the way to a royal crown in just a few years. Sometimes I wonder what would happen if I managed to distinguish myself somehow, but then I push away such unworthy, selfish thoughts. Of course, we don't fight for rewards. The fate of the world is at stake. And yet, Erebeth's blush deepens and she falls silent. Well, thank you. I have to go. And we still have this odd creature that is looking for someone. And it said it was in a tent? Dude. That's nice, thank you. And that's ours now. There's one more tent that we can go into, right? Before we continue our journey. Amber. Oh, we haven't talked to her yet, have we? Amber is bobbing her head and humming a tune. She greets you with a carefree, cheerful smile. Wandering eyes linger on you for just a moment before darting off again into the distance. How are you handling your new abilities? Abilities? The girl tilts her head to her shoulder. What are you talking about? Oh, the tricks you learned when the big grey house blew up. Oh, they're funny. Thanks for teaching me. Them to me. The Queen gave me the title of Knight Commander and put me in charge of an army. What do you think about that? The elf focuses her wandering gaze on your eyes, smiles and shakes her head. Oh, don't believe titles. All of us in the world are children of the street, barefoot, hungry, scared, a step away from death. Some imagine they're strong and rich like gods, but don't forget who you really are behind the title. She may be a avatar, a personification of, I don't know, a goddess? I mean, she's very wise for her young age. Let's get to Nura Dendiwar's tent. Ah, that's Nura. Hello there. Knight Commander, how can I help? There is much I can do. Just ask. Nura looks at you with eyes filled with enthusiasm. She's holding a notebook and a traveler's inkwell. You've probably heard about the wound I have, the one that sometimes opens on my chest. Can you perhaps tell me if it is some kind of demonic curse? Yes, indeed. I've been told of your affliction. Nura peers at the center of your chest. Can you will the wound to open? No, that's a shame. What can you tell me about this wound? Well, it's difficult to say. I know of blades that leave never-healing cuts, of poisons that stop wounds from healing. I've heard of witches' curses that are rewarded with eternal wounds, but wounds that seem to reopen and heal over and over? Perhaps you know of other cases like this? Let's think. In 4671, a Mendevian army corporal had all his bones and cartilage turned to glass. In 4700, a scribe in Kinabris had all her skin simply come away like she'd been boiled. And in 4638. You don't happen to have insects crawling over you? Locusts? No. Rats maybe? No, too bad. Nura looks at you with genuine regret. Do you think it's dangerous? Oh, it's most likely very dangerous, but you are under the protection of Iomide, Commander. She granted you mythic powers, as they say. Surely the Inheritor would not leave you to face this alone. Have you perhaps noticed that the wound opens at moments when you waver in your faith? Perhaps it is triggered by doubt. Frowning, Nura looks at you with sincere concern. You know, somehow I have the feeling that our powers aren't very divine in nature. Maybe this is a demonic trick. Maybe of the devil, of Lucifer, or this someone else. Trying to lead us to obliterate everything. Maybe this is a great scheme. Or we are just blessed by a goddess. We'll see, probably. Thank you for your answers. Tell me about yourself. Oh my, I could tell you so many amazing things, and you chose the most boring one of all. But alright, about myself then. Where are you from? Isker, a small piece of land that proudly calls itself a country, although it hasn't been independent for a single day in all the centuries it's existed. They have a lot of national pride, but all of it is borrowed, always looking to the great day when they can at least be free from the rule of Cheliax. Infernal Cheliax remains one of the most powerful military nations in the Inner Sea region. Its control of the Ark of Aroden, the passage between the Inner Sea and the Arcadian Ocean, also gives it a vital role in much of the region's trade. Nevertheless, as important as a nation may be today, it pales in comparison to its former imperial glory. Today, Cheliax suffers from extreme diabolism and tyranny, which prevent it from truly achieving its full potential. Internal observers, including the new nobility of Cheliax, firmly believe that Asmodeus and Hell serve Cheliax and assist in maintaining the power necessary for Cheliax to assume its rightful role among the leading nations of the Inner Sea. That sounds stupid. These scary love talking politics. If two of them start bargaining over beats at the market, you can be sure that they'll end up arguing about whether an independent Isker will be a monarchy or a republic. I also always found it funny to listen to and a little disgusting. You see, there are a lot of us halflings in the country, but very few are citizens. Most are slaves. I was lucky. I've always been clever ever since I was so little, so they sent me to school instead of making me do the grunt work. They taught me to count and write, and I was sold as a secretary to Lord Axelar Tresbot. He's the one I left Isker with, never to return, I hope. How did you come to serve Queen Galfrey? I was the slave of Lord Axelar Tresbot in Isker, my homeland, as mentioned. Oh, what a man he was. He towered over his fellows like a rock over a garbage heap. A true hero. He bought me as a simple secretary, but he made me learn the history of the world wound. All of it, one volume after another. He hired tutors for me, even sent me to meet prominent historians. He didn't want a simple slave, but a slave with an impeccable education. Lord Tresbot was going on a crusade. He firmly believed that the servants of the good gods were weak, and only a follower of Asmodeus could stand against the demonic invasion. Interesting. I don't really understand if this Asmodeus is the king of hell, and is the most powerful of the 9 archdevils that inhabit hell, and the only one of hell's rulers to claim full divinity. Why would anyone believe that he would help a human against a demonic invasion? Wouldn't an archdemon be someone that likes a demonic invasion? I don't understand that. That doesn't make any sense. He took me along as a secretary and historian, and most importantly, he entrusted me with recording his glorious story for future generations. In his crusade, Lord Tresbot performed many brave feats, but even he could not stand against the world wound alone. In his final battle with the demons, when my lord realized he was doomed, his final act was to cover my retreat, so that I could tell the world of his great deeds. Some people have said what he did was not heroic, just an arrogant moron, puffing himself up one last time. But I say, curse their tongues. My difficult journey ended in Mendiv, where I found my freedom. There I published Lord Tresbot's biography, and I don't want to boast, but who am I kidding? Of course I do. The book sold in great numbers and made me rather famous for a time. That's what brought me to the Queen's attention. She invited me to her court. After all, she was curious about my deceased lord, and she was in great need of an expert on the history of the world wound. I hope you'll find me useful as well. So you're not just an historian, but a writer too. Will you write a book about my crusade? Ha! Why not? As soon as we finish off the demons, that is. I'll get right to it. Just take care that you don't end up like Lord Tresbot. Do you worship any deity? She makes a wry face. When I was a slave in Isger, they would beat me with a stick to force me into believing in Asmodeus. They hit me and said it was for my own good. Ever since then, I don't like temples. I realize there are different gods like Desnor or Caden, who teach goodness and freedom, but it's just, as soon as I smell frankincense, I see the slave's driver's stick. Maybe one day I'll be able to turn into a deity without cringing from a blow for not being reverent enough, but for now, I'll let others pray for me. Nura's smile trembles and collapses. Caden Kalian, god of alcohol, bravery, and freedom. Is alcohol, bravery? Are you kidding me? Is you seriously telling me that you wanted to combine bravery and freedom with alcohol? Who wrote this? An American? It's one of the Ascended. Those mortals who achieved godhood by passing the test of the Starstone. Maybe this is a god that Tyrion Lannister made. I mean, Tyrion Lannister wanted a gods of tits and wine, so... That wasn't... The early seasons of Game of Thrones were glorious. They were filled with humor and an awesome script, extraordinary dialogues, good story. And then... came season 7 and 8. Oh, goodness. Abominations. Nura's smile trembles and collapses when she hears about the glory of Game of Thrones and how it ended. Nura sounds sincere, but you feel that she's holding something back. Tell me the history of the world wound. Oh, I could talk about that for hours. What exactly do you want to know? Tell me about old Sarkoris. It was an unforgiving country, inhabited by numerous tribes of Khalid barbarians. Imagine Numeria, but without the metal mountains, or the realm of the Mammoth Lords, but with a milder climate. That's Sarkoris. The country was ruled by priests of forgotten deities and shamans. Okay, Numeria, fallen into the cave, we read about that. Mammoth Lords, a realm of megafauna inhabited by humans almost as savage as the prehistoric beasts surrounding them. The realm of the Mammoth Lords is a land in Avistan's far north that is home to myriad nomadic tribes of Khalid barbarians. Oh dear. It is said that even back then, before the world wound, the boundary between worlds was especially thin in this region. Since ancient times, Deskari has had his claws sunk deep into the minds of the locals. His cults thrived here for many centuries. Rodin tried to stamp them out, but in the end, of course, he passed away. How did the world wound come to be? It happened the year Rodin died. 4606. A little over a century ago. No one knows if the timing was coincidental or if there's some connection with Rodin's death, but I'll tell you what we do know. Rodin, I'm just going to read that one again. I need to remind myself. Rodin was the immortal Aslanti who raised the Starstone from the bottom of the Inner Sea, and in so doing founded the city of Absalom and ascending to godhood. A prophecy told of his return. It's interesting, ascending to godhood, so apparently mortals can ascend. Maybe that's what we will do in the end, ascend to demigodhood or something? Prophecy told of his return to Golarion and the beginning of a new age of glory. On the eve of his return, however, his clerics were cut off from his power, and terrible storms wrecked the world. now presumed dead, Rodin's demise ushered in the current age of lost omens. The priests and shamans who ruled Sarkoris hated ancient magic, and all who practiced it. Wizards and sorcerers were driven from the land or worse. One of their prisons held a witch named Arelu Volesh. We know nothing about her besides her name, and of course the atrocities she committed. By some unknown method, she managed to harness the terrible power of the demon lord Descari. Together, they tore open the barrier between worlds, opening a rift to the abyss in the very middle of Sarkoris. The world wound slowly but mercilessly expanded, devouring more and more land. In a matter of years, Sarkoris was a memory. After a moment of silence, Nura adds softly, "Sometimes I think, what did they do to Arelu in that prison? Just imagine she was ready to give herself to the abyss. If only the demons might devour her torturers along with her. To imagine such hatred, it terrifies me." Tell me about the First Crusade. It began in 4622. Yes, it took the church and the secular authorities nearly 2 decades and hundreds of thousands of lives before they decided to take action. In the meantime, Sarkoris was only supported by a handful of volunteers. By the time the crusade began, the demons had already invaded Mendev. Crusaders pushed them back in what must have seemed a total triumph at the time, the forces of good easily crushing the demons on all fronts. They erected Dresden on the lands they conquered, an indestructible fortress and the capital of the Crusader movement. In 4630, 8 years after it began, the First Crusade was declared victorious. It was the first triumph of the Crusaders and, unfortunately, the last. Tell me about the Second Crusade. In 4638, the world wound suddenly started expanding, and a new wave of demons appeared. The Crusaders were all but delighted. Last time they'd routed the forces of the Abyss, and they welcomed another chance to prove themselves, but this time everything was different. Instead of scattered gangs, they faced a large and organized army. Dresden was besieged, and the Crusaders lost all the lands they'd won back before. They had to retreat, and all that remained of Sarkoris was left to the demons. But while the monsters were devouring the unprotected lands, the Crusaders erected a chain of wardstones along the border with the world wound. We have Iomide and her herald to thank for their help. It was the Second Crusade's only victory, but it halted the wound's growth. The catastrophe had become a stalemate, at the cost of a tremendous sacrifice. Tell me about the Third Crusade. About 50 years after the opening of the World Wound, Descari found an ally. Baphomet entered the war, a cunning, insidious demon lord who prefers deception to open conquest. He sets his enemies against each other and lures the virtuous onto the path of wickedness. Traitors appeared among the Crusaders, secret agents of his cult. For a time, no one suspected a thing, even as they watched helplessly as the Crusader movement fell to ruin. Where once valor proudly stood, now greed and dumb cruelty reigned, and outrage was drowned in apathy. Maybe our Inquisition chief is a disciple of Baphomet, or at least unconsciously is a disciple of his, even without knowing. Dumb cruelty, that's fitting. In 4665, the church announced a new crusade, hoping to boost morale. They didn't succeed, to put it mildly. Some fought the demons in earnest, and for a time they even dared hope to retake Dresden, but the Third Crusade would be remembered as a witch hunt in every sense. Inquisitors hoped to purge any cultists from the ranks of fighters, but instead they got a barrage of denunciations, widespread suspicion, and innocent victims. It sometimes happened that two orders would denounce each other as traitors and wipe each other out, much to the demons' delight. Just 3 years later, in 4668, The church put the disgrace to an end. Of all the crusades, that one was the least glorious. Please tell me about the Fourth Crusade. Ah, of course. The demons had no intention of sitting quietly caged behind the wardstones. They kept attacking Kinabris, trying to reach the stone and destroy it, or just scratch its surface, or if even that wasn't possible, befoul it. The Crusaders drove the demons away from the city again and again. The Fourth Crusade would last for 15 years in exhausting study and positional warfare. The demons attacked, and they were pushed back. The Crusaders went on the offensive, but were forced to retreat, and all the while the losses were tremendous. The Fourth Crusade's only achievement was that they didn't let a single wardstone fall. They didn't retake a sliver of land, to say nothing of Dresden. So many lives, just to maintain the stalemate. The First World War wants to know your location. You can visit, for example, areas in France, even today, where there are still craters of thousands of bombs that fell, and trees that were planted to grow over the absolute destruction. Absolute darkness and shame that happened. Thank you for your answers. What? What's the First World War? Nura is completely stunned. Are you a traveler from a distant time and space? Bye. Sorry. Okay. Interesting. Okay, so I want your quartz, silver buckle, alcohol you can keep, but the coins are mine, and have fun with the hammer. Outside. I guess we're done here. We talked to everyone, so we can return to the queen. Talk to her. Journal. The outcast. Prepare to face her head on. Cold waters. Fishing village. Visit Janoch in Chili Creek. Okay. Yeah, but we can call this a day now. Area exit. No, we don't need that. Okay, so next episode we're going to... Who are you? Did you just... What's that divine power? Ah! Commander. I've talked to Darren about the estate. He's going to celebrate his birthday at Heaven's Edge, so we can go there as guests. A celebration? That is far from ideal. It will be rather inconvenient for me to conduct the investigation with all the guests around. Thank you nonetheless, Commander. When you decide to go to the estate, I will join you. Yes, okay. Next episode we're going to start the Fifth Crusade.